Hi, and welcome to FrazlCast. Climb aboard the GNOME train.
Chugga, 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 chugga.
Please make sure to keep your limbs and experimental instruments inside the train at all times. And now, on with the show.
Hello, Internet. It is Frazley the Awesome Gnome. Each week, I am joined by awesome people from Azeroth and beyond, and we talk about World of Warcraft and geeky stuff. On this episode, we get to know Cara a lot more. We hear about their WoW history and have a fun time geeking out on things like Star Trek along the way. Let's use my customized ultra-safe transporter to head on over to meet up with this week's guest. So I am feeling great. So I got to go on my first walk this morning since Saturday. Darn cold in that rain. And I'm on my third mug of coffee, and I am joined by Cara.
Hello, Frazley.
It is so great to have you, Cara. I don't know why I didn't have you on sooner.
I know why, because I don't stay up when you're podcasting normally.
I said, like, my 2019 mood will be, if I need to record with somebody, I'm going to modify the recording time. So I'm going to have some like crazy changes in schedule throughout the year. But I'm like, I want to get as many people as I can on the show. I want to get to know as many people as I can. So that's always the fun part.
And I am so grateful that you did, because talking to you is such a joy.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so glad to be here.
And it was interesting. I was like so nervous of like, this is Cara. I mean, it's like, so just, I think we're not rating, so that way I don't have to make you mad on anything. Like, down this boss.
It takes a lot to get me actually mad.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Oh, I am not some enigma, like, internet person thing. I'm just me. I'm just a girl that lives in Virginia and has a computer and talks to people on the internet. And I think listeners kind of get that of feeling like I'm just a person. Like, I'm not, I mean, everyone's special in their own way.
Yeah.
In like a Mr. Rogers kind of setting. But I mean, we're all just people. We're all humans. We all have that little spark of humanity in us that can glow brightly when we want it to, but it doesn't make us better or worse than other people.
Everyone has something that they can add to the world. Someone that I follow, TK, said the saddest thing is when someone realizes who they are, but then they aren't able to share it with the world. I'm like, that is so true.
Amen. That's a really good point.
And somebody that I know who has shared a lot with the world made a bumper for the show. Epicinsanity. What time is it?
It's time to go around the table.
Great idea. So what have you been up to recently?
Oh my God, I love Epicinsanity. So great.
Oh, me too. And it was one of those, I started talking with them on Discord. Oh, it is so much fun. It's like, I'm so afraid to talk with Epic. I mean, there's a lot of people I look up to. I'm always afraid to talk with them. Wait, would that be a lot of people?
Just want to make a good impression too. It's like, I don't want to be coming across as like some weirdo. I want this person to like me. So it almost feels like you have to make yourself smaller in a way at first, instead of just letting yourself out there right off the bat. But what people like about you and me and other great people is just us, yourself.
Yeah.
And each person's individuality is why we love them so much. But anyway, enough gushing about people that we love. So what I have been up to this week, my raid team, Rubber Chicken Coalition, ventured into Battle for Dazar Allure on Tuesday when it came out. That was really, really fun. I'm the raid leader, so it's my responsibility to study the fights and know what to tell people and where to go and what the mobs are going to do. And I only studied the first two bosses. And so after we killed them, which way exceeded my expectations, because a lot of previous raids, we've only done like the first boss, maybe the second on the first night, said, I have no idea what to do on this third boss. And one of our team members just stepped up and led the third boss, and we downed it in one shot. And then we got a couple pulls in on the fourth boss. A lot of people got upgrades. It was fantastic.
Nice.
I'm really happy. We've been calling it the Razzle Dazzle raid. I'm sure new names will come out as more people do the raid, but Dazar Allure doesn't really flow very well for me.
No.
You want to make it fun too.
Oh, absolutely.
Razzle-dazzle.
Yeah.
Or on Warcast, they called it the Bedazzler raid.
Oh. I wonder if a raid team could be bedazzling stuff during the downtime when people are like refreshing and stuff like that. You could be doing bedazzling and be like, here's what I worked on in between the raids.
That would be so fun if everyone shows up with like a jean jacket that has like bedazzles all over the back of it. And you're like an 80s team. I don't know. That, yeah.
Oh, and then like do a YouTube video, but like have like the montage and have like the music playing. Oh, yes. So somebody do that.
I can see it. What have you been up to this week?
Been watching Netflix. I'm currently watching Maniac. I have not finished it enough, so I can't do a say on it other than I'm hooked. But the one I did finish was Fire Festival. And I have been captivated by the Fire Festival that happened, I think it was 2017. It was a music festival that went nowhere. It was on the Swindled podcast. What I like about it, it really talks about the importance of, as an influencer, each person has to know, and to me, everyone's an influencer, no matter how big or small you are influencing somebody, but we have to be careful what we're promoting and what we're doing. And the Fire Festival, some of its biggest marketing was people that were influencing, and people signed up because of what they did. And it was just a fascinating documentary. I saw it. I could not stop watching. So definitely recommend checking it out.
Interesting.
Netflix has really been doing some amazing documentaries. I'm impressed with what they've been doing. I've not been watching non-Netflix stuff because there's so much good Netflix stuff to watch. And then I started playing My Time at Porsche.
And streaming this a little bit, right?
Yeah, and it's fun because then when you're streaming, you can talk with people while you're doing it. It's actually conducive for streaming. It's a grindy game. It's definitely like Stardew Valley. I think someone was saying that it's like a worse Stardew Valley, and someone was like, well, Stardew Valley is great. So if it's worse than Stardew Valley, that's not bad for a 1.0 release if it's almost as good as Stardew. And it feels kind of like Animal Crossing as well, because I know that's one thing that you love to play is Animal Crossing.
I do.
And I have to say, it's like Animal Crossing because like you upgrade your workshop, you upgrade this, and you're like, okay, I need to make this item. How do I make it? And you have to figure out how to do it, how to do that. It's like Minecraft as well, because there's mining. There's a lot of stuff I still have to uncover in it, but I'm definitely going to keep playing it. There's a charm too. I don't know how big the team is, but you can tell that it's not a AAA team. And there's a funness to that, is that you know somebody put in so much work and detail into it. And I just see them smiling, think all the stuff about their game.
Aw, that's awesome.
And then in WoW, my High Mountain Taran Into is now 52.
Woohoo!
Finished up Stone Talon Mountains, Desolace, Southern Barrens, and Dustwall Marsh. So that was all this past week. I did not intend to. This year I'm going for Lore Master, so I'm trying to do everything that I can to get all of it done. So as I'm loving alts, I'm like, what do I not have a achievement for? Because this year I want to be finally Lore Master. I want to have that. I have the Explorer. That one's not as hard with flying. Yeah, that's one of my goals. But having fun with pet names. So my bird is Buckbeak, my spider is Aragog, and my thunder lizard is Littlefoot.
Oh, I love it.
I remember Silverbolt was always saying like how like you feel the connection to that pet. I'm like, I get it, because it's like I'm going along and like Littlefoot will do stuff and like I'm making up stories like, why isn't this item dropping off this thing? And someone's like, well, wonder if Littlefoot is like crushing their head or something like that. So that way it's not dropping. Like, that is perfect. So then like when things don't go right, or like when Littlefoot, today I was in Tenaris doing the Thunderdome and Littlefoot was just going at it. It was like, oh, Littlefoot, you got it, buddy. So it's building that connection to something that is like a AI object, which is insane.
Right. And that's kind of the basis of roleplay too.
That's one thing I want to get into. I want to do role-playing some more. I was on Wormrest Accord, and that was fun. There are so many great people. And like when you go through cities in Stormwind, they're so alive because everyone's doing different things. Everyone's having chats, and you'll walk into a bar and someone's chatting. I mean, it just feels so much alive.
Like an actual city.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I finally ran Oldir with the guild Convert to Raids. So they were doing the 6th-year anniversary. I realized I've been here for 2 anniversary events. So I've not been here for the entire time of CTR. But it's amazing to be like, I'm part of a guild that is so vast and so old in a way. I mean,
established, maybe?
Yeah, established, yeah. Because I think Turart was saying that finally CTR's in kindergarten. I was like, nice, so we can finally...
Aww.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such a good way to put it.
Turart on the Converter was saying that their son is following along in the same age as CTR, so they're seeing the childhood development.
That's so cool. And Turart does a ton for the guild. I'm sure she's already planning the 7th anniversary stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So what did you think of the Wing to Oldir?
I liked it. I really liked the atmosphere of it. And Mother, that is so cool. Like having Mother watch over you. It's kind of creepy because like this AI Titan type of construct that's watching you. But it's also cool to have them respond to things that you do. So I want to do all three so I can now get the storyline. But I love that high fantasy, that high tech. That's one reason I love WoW. I love that WoW is not just fantasy, but it has steampunk. It has futurist. It has alien demons.
It has everything. It really does.
And pop culture references. It has Chris Farley dancing as an ogre, has Robin Williams. I mean, it has all the fun stuff.
Yes.
And then the last thing in WoW is I'm leveling a gnome with Michael on the Blue Recluse. We're doing it every Wednesday, and my hunter's now 25. It's interesting having a hunter that is far exceeding the level, but now I'm able to learn how to play my hunter on Wednesdays better through the other hunter. So I love the hunter, the gnomes, has mechanical bunny, and I heard they have more mechanical pets as you get older. I love the gnome hunter. It is fun just to see like this little creature controlling something. So it's a lot of fun.
So that just feeds into your love of gnomes that much more.
Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome.
And I love the quirkiness of gnomes. I love how a gnome tries their best, but things don't always go right. Gnomes mess up. Gnomes have things just like go wrong. And I love that part of it, that they're doing the best that they can. And unlike goblins, they don't intend for their things to blow up. They just do on accident.
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way. But gosh, gnomes are persistent.
Yes.
If it blows up, they just keep going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see Mechatork in the expansion. I'm terrified of what it could mean that they're a raid boss. I don't know what's going on with the story, and we won't know for a story for a little while. Have you fought Mechatork yet?
I have not.
Okay. No one except for the cinematics that have been out that I've not watched yet. No one knows what's happening with Mechatork.
Yes, because for Alliance, he is one of the final bosses. I think the last 3.
Saving some of the best for last.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I always love to do when I bring guests on is learn more about them. Kind of learn about their history. What makes them them? I mean, kind of like what we talked about earlier. Everybody has something that makes them who they are. So you are a gamer and you love the game. How did you get started into gaming?
Oh my gosh. So I had to really think about this because it's something I never really thought of as an identity, to think that I am a gamer. I game a lot. It's a big part of my life. And I think it stems from having nerdy parents. And I didn't realize how nerdy my parents were until I grew up a little bit and could look back and see that when I was really little, back in like the late 80s, my parents put their old computer in my bedroom. And this was the time when we had like 5-inch floppies, when we had floppy disks that were literally like you could flop them around. So I got to learn on that. And I started, like, I was probably 4 years old. Like, I was a wee little bit. And I started just typing in the word processor, just putzing around on the keyboard, no big deal. But getting comfortable with a computer in my life, I think really influenced me just over my entire life, not just when I was little. Later on, my parents got me the DOS versions of Jeopardy! And Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? So I started super nerdy with like trivia and like a map on my wall so I could see where Carmen was in my game. And then my dad got a Sega Genesis when that came out. So I was a Sega girl when I was growing up with Sonic and Tails and Knuckles, but I was never good at them. I was the one who watched my dad play. And I think looking back on that, that's probably why I love streamers and watching streamers on Twitch, because me and controllers don't get along very well, but I still love the stories of the games. I love watching other people succeed in the games. So, and then in high school, I picked up Diablo, and that's where I kind of got my start into Blizzard games. Then Diablo 2 came out, and I was absolutely obsessed with that. I played the crap out of that for like at least a year, probably more. And then someone in that game said, hey, have you ever played this game called EverQuest? And so I picked up EverQuest. I started playing that, and I played that for about 6 years. I ended up being in one of the hardcore top-end raiding guilds in EverQuest. And oh my goodness, that was my experience of learning what raiding as a job was like. So that's basically the TLDR of me in gaming.
In EverQuest, that's one I never played, but that was one that there was a show on G4 called Portal, and I loved that. Like, they would go into MMOs, and that I would see EverQuest. I was meant to play EverQuest, but I started playing like Anarchy Online and Star Wars Galaxies. And then GameSpy brought me over to WoW.
Nice.
But yeah, I like what you said about like your inspiration, because I was on Anna's general chat and I realized that my sisters loved the game. My parents, not so much because they were an older generation, but I would watch my sister play and I was like, they influenced me to game. And it's amazing when we want to be like them. I bet you want to be like your parents. You wanted to be like, oh, this is so much fun. Oh, I want a game like they did. Like I watched my sister play A Link to the Past. I watched them play Super Mario World on the SNES. So they never transitioned to the 3D games as much. Though actually what's interesting is one of my sisters does miniature games and the other one does D&D. It's interesting that they moved from computer games now to tabletop.
Yes.
Then I got the third sister. They don't play anything that's not 2D because they just never transitioned from 2D to 3D. But yeah, inspiration.
That's awesome. And now there's so many devs coming out with 2D games that seem retro, but they're actually built on the newer coding systems.
Oh, yeah.
They play a lot better. So there's still a market for that.
When I got into gaming, I was into 3D gaming, but I love going back and playing some of the 2D stuff. I keep almost picking up a Switch because the Switch has so much great on there.
My husband has a Switch and he loves it. He takes it everywhere. It's just super duper convenient. I think if you're hesitant on getting a newer generation console like the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, or Switch is good if you are traveling a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And it's only going to get better because, Skyrim. If you don't want the side scroll, you can do Skyrim or Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That one, I love the storyline of and the development. The developer said that this one's finally what they always wanted Legend of Zelda to be. It was their dream of it shows.
It's a beautiful game.
So what got you into Blizzard and World of Warcraft?
Ooh, so I had played Diablo and Diablo 2, so I knew that Blizzard was a good company. So when WoW came out, people in EverQuest said, hey, this new MMO is coming out. It's going to be the EQ killer. Now we hear about every MMO is going to be the WoW killer. Back then it was the EQ killer. So when that came out, I got it and I dabbled around in it for a little while. But because I played EverQuest, my circle of friends were pretty much all still playing EQ. And at that time, this shows how dedicated I was to EverQuest. They had a server where they charged $40 a month to play on it instead of, the usual $15. But it was the GM server. There were game masters everywhere and they ran events daily.
Oh,
it was fantastic. I loved my time there. It was just, I think, the pinnacle of my MMO experience, having the GM interaction. But $40 a month is a lot.
Yeah.
You're basically paying for your box game every month at that point. So it was really hard to justify paying for another game that I wasn't actively playing every day. So I put down WoW for a while. And then I met my now husband. He was playing Final Fantasy XI and I was playing EverQuest. So we each tried each other's game and neither of us could get into each other's game. I didn't like the controls on Final Fantasy. He thought EverQuest was stuck in the past a little bit where you have to go up and hail everyone to talk to them. Yeah, it was a thing. So I suggested, hey, there's this game called WoW. Let's try that. I created a monster in both of us. It just clicked for both of us. We ended up making our own raiding guild in Wrath, and that lasted through Dragon Soul. Dragon Soul kind of killed a lot of raiding teams. So we took Pandaria off raiding, and then we jumped back in Draenor when we joined CTR and the Rubber Chicken Coalition, who's our raid team.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are jumping into Final Fantasy 14, and to me, that's Final Fantasy 11 style with WoW combined into one. So it would be interesting now if Final Fantasy 14 was out, would the both of you be playing that over WoW? I mean, it's interesting what we get into.
Absolutely. And a lot of it has to do with the circle of friends that you have when it comes to MMO type games. I'm sure if, enough of our friends went over to Final Fantasy 14 that we would give it a shot. But we're all pretty solidified in WoW at this point.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those that a few people that I know in the podcast community are playing Final Fantasy 14, and I played that for a couple of years, and I would actually almost go back, but I'm like, no, I'm too much into WoW, and I don't have time for or the ability to justify another subscription.
Exactly.
But it is amazing the people that you're in, because one of the things that keeps me in WoW is the community. It's the people. Yes. And trying to do stuff. If I didn't have the podcast, it would be a lot more tempting to be like, oh, I could just kind of leave right now. I mean, and that's one reason I love this part, is I love tying me to the game. you have a lot of various jobs in the community. You are a convert to raid officer.
Technically, yes. Technically, I'm called a greeter, but we are officers. And that is basically we invite new people to the guild, or we invite people's alts to the guild. We let them know how the guild runs, what resources they have within the guild, that kind of thing.
It is not a easy job. I one time inquired with Bartholomew saying, hey, I want to be a greeter. And they sent me the requirements like, I cannot do the level of stuff that you need right now. So I mean, it's one of those greeters. You do a lot of work. My hat's off to all of you. Whenever I see you guys are like, hey, anybody need help with the game doing all that stuff?
Yeah. When they needed greeters a while ago, they put out a call saying, hey, we need some more greeters to fill in hours. So I just put my name in the hat. And after a little while, they came back and said, are you interested? And I said, yeah. And I got trained. Greeters are only required to cover 4 hours a week on this schedule. It's really good for people who work at home or just are home a lot, or, have a lot of extra hours in the day. So you're only required to do 4 hours, but a lot of us do a lot extra than 4 just because we enjoy it so much. It is a volunteer position, of course. So another thing I do for CTR, I volunteered myself to be the guild bank organizer.
Ooh, nice.
We have 10 guilds.
Yeah.
So that's 10 guild banks. A lot of people think I'm crazy for that, but it is right up my alley. I love organizing digital stuff. I worked in a library for 5 years, so it's kind of up my alley to organize things. And I worked with the database a lot, so that was digital for sure. So it's really enjoyable to me.
Is there like a spreadsheet or an add-on that you use to kind of know like what guild has what?
I keep my own spreadsheet for just my own sanity, but no, not really. Nothing official.
And now I'm reminded of like the Hotel Dumont and a series of unfortunate events. Like I all the rooms are like key cards, and I don't know why. I'm just picturing like over here. This goes over here. A1, A5.
Yeah, we have a basic organizational structure for the tabs, trying to keep it with items that people are actually going to use. I think the hardest thing is that the people who join CTR are all very, very nice. And they feel bad withdrawing items from the guild bank. They don't want to be selfish with it. They want to leave it in there for someone else who might need it more than they do. So I'm constantly putting on my nag hat to say, hey guys, remember to check the guild bank, use what you can. Because I don't want it to just sit in there and not get used. It's in there for people to use it.
I always love like going in to be like, oh, I don't have that. So it's fun there. But yeah, it's one of those, I don't want to take it a little bit unless I absolutely need it.
Right.
So I did take some goblin gliders, and that was helpful.
Exactly. And I like to think of it as the give a penny, take a penny little thing that you see when you go to a checkout somewhere.
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
Like, if you need a penny, take that penny.
Yeah. I put in my lost mail when I got that. So that way I was like, somebody else in the guild can use that. I wanted to pass that on because I bought mine in the auction house. Like, I want to save somebody else some money in the auction house.
And that's awesome because of the kindness of people like you that do that. The guild bank is almost always stocked with things that are actually usable.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
fantastic.
Like the Void Satchel, that gives an heirloom, I believe, right?
Yep. And not a lot of people are getting those now because it was a Draenor ship thing. And who goes to their garrison and does the ship missions anymore?
Oh, I know. There's a pirate ship hat I want to get in on those, and I keep meaning to go back to and work on that because there's like a hat I believe you get off of one of the missions, but I got to keep remembering to get oil, do all that, and it's like I'm over in BFA or I'm on an alt.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, transmog is the motivation for so much that I do in that game.
Oh, mine too. I always feel bad when I'm leaving a zone. I'm like, I know there's more here. I actually had to turn off all the things. I love that add-on, but it also drives me.
It's a good add-on.
Oh, it is.
It's an enabler.
Yeah. And what is the best thing that has happened to you since you started?
This is such a big question because the best thing, how do I pick the best thing? So I'm just going to say it's getting to meet and interact with so many awesome people. There's just been so many little moments just talking to people that just warm my heart every day. And I think just being in a guild like CTR, it's got thousands of members. There's so much opportunity for friendship and camaraderie, but it's also great to if you don't feel like chatting, you can just kind of lurk in the background because there's always some chat going on around you. And you can jump in as you want to if you feel comfortable, or you can just observe.
That's one reason I joined, is I realized that I would not do good in a small raiding guild, but I can do good in a guild where I don't raid, but I can at least do something to interact with people. And I was actually amazed. The CTR is what got me into podcasting and streaming. And because there's a huge, in the Discord, a huge section of people that podcast and stream. And I've met so many podcasters who are like, oh, you're in CTR, you're in CTR. And it's just the wealth of knowledge. That Discord, Pat could charge money to that Discord that I would pay.
It is great how willing everyone is to help each other out too. I think CTR is kind of blessed in that way, where we want each other to succeed. We help build each other up rather than bringing people down.
Yeah.
It's very unique in the Warcraft community, I think.
And that's one reason I love the Converted podcast. You get to meet so many different people. Like the stories, like Belsnickel was back on, and they're talking about like their job as an actor, and like hearing all that going on. And then you get to hear about the different raid teams, like the person's in a truck and they're driving with their dad for work, or while their dad's driving, they are in the back of the truck raiding. And I'm like, that just shows you never know who you're talking to,
right?
And what they're doing in the world. I mean, and I love that.
And getting to experience other people's stories and bringing those stories into your own life and being able to examine yourself reflected in those other people. It's very enriching just as a person in the world.
Yeah, it broadens your perspectives.
Absolutely.
And one opportunity CTR brings is the amount of raid teams. Like, it's mind-boggling. But you have a raid team, so you run the Rubber Chicken Coalition.
I do. And it's so funny to me because I never set out to be a raid leader. That was never one of my goals. But being a member of RCC, as we call it, our previous raid leader had a work schedule change. So I stepped up and said, I will get the raid put together while you're on your way home from work. And that just kind of turned into me being the voice at the beginning of the raids, getting people together. And when his work schedule changed further, that he couldn't even join raids anymore, which really was sad. We miss you, Swayze. Then I just kind of stepped up in that position that I was kind of already dabbling in to begin with. And I'm the leader now. So that's a thing.
What is one of the resources you use the most often?
I absolutely love Hazelnutty Games raid videos. She just came out with all her videos for the new raid, Battle of Dazar Allure. I know it took her a lot of effort to do those, and they are fantastic. She explains things super duper well and in a really short duration. So you don't have to sit through like a 20-minute video to get the vibe of what you're supposed to do in the raid. And she makes them fun. And I love fun. Fun is great.
Oh, absolutely. I watched their TSM video, and I still got to learn TSM, but at least I now use it on a regular basis because of their TSM video.
Right. And I also use Warcraft logs, which also goes into wipefest.net and WoW Analyzer. Those are great because you get to see what you're doing either as an individual character or your entire team. It gives you suggestions on how you can be better.
Oh, I remember when I was doing a few raids, I used Warcraft logs, and it was amazing to be like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that much damage, and to realize some areas I'm doing good, some areas, yeah, you got to improve. And I like that it's not just you got to do better DPS. How do I do it?
Exactly. It focuses on the little things that you can do to just boost your numbers just a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely. And then that way there's less chance for one of the bosses taking out somebody because they didn't get DPS down fast enough.
Right. And then I also use Wowhead. I search stuff multiple times a day. If I don't know what that item is, I will just search it on Wowhead. It's a fantastic resource.
Oh, the amount of data they have. I mean, like, I'm going through here and it's like, it is just mind-boggling the amount of people that here and there will post stuff there. Like, I was going through one and someone said, hey, try this over here. I'm like, that's incredible.
Yes.
When I remember, I try to post things that I find. It's amazing that you'll go through the reputations tab. Oh, somebody uploaded this. That's always fun.
I love it. The community aspect of it, being able to look up something and look in the comments and see what other people experienced around that item or spell or boss or mob or whatever it is super helpful.
Yeah. I'm betting that they probably do like backups all the time. I'm just thinking of all that data because they did a great job with like WoW Classic coming out. They're going to have Thoughtbot comments. So, I mean, they're bringing back data, which is so weird that data is going to still be relevant from years ago.
Old school. Love it.
Yeah. What was the biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
Oh my goodness. So I'm naturally pretty quiet and introverted. So my challenge is being loud. When you're raid leader, you have to step up and give call outs and tell people what to do. And as just a quiet person, that's not really my nature to tell people what to do. So that was kind of jarring at first. I had this thought of like, oh, I guess I actually have to talk and not lurk. Oops. But it's also made me get comfortable with saying, I don't know when I'm asked a question that I have no idea what the answer is. And sometimes that's in the middle of a fight when someone says, hey, we have a B-res, do you want to use it? And I go, I don't know. But it's great because my team's knowledge is way bigger than my own. So when I say I don't know and someone else jumps in with a suggestion, it's super helpful. And then in that way, I learn that I don't have to do it all on my own. I just have to be the one to clarify if there are multiple suggestions, which one we need to go with.
That was one thing that they brought up at the podcasters meetup I went to on Tuesday night. They said, even though you're running the podcast, you have a team of community, you have people around you, you can use their knowledge because you're good at one thing and you bring your skills, but somebody else can give you advice. I love that insight.
Yes, being able to take in other people's knowledge and admit to yourself, I don't know this stuff, and humble yourself enough to say that it's kind of a big lesson.
One thing I've always admired about you is there was one time on Twitter that I thought a certain thing, and actually it wasn't even a game topic, it was a topic about society, and you brought up a point that I never thought of. So your perspective helped me, and we dialogued on Discord afterwards. So it was one of those, it's always helpful to talk with other people and figure out, what do I know, or what do I not know, and what do I need to improve?
Right.
What is one of the craziest stories that has ever happened in your raids?
So I racked my brain trying to think of just like the craziest story. We have too many. For me, it's the small moments that happen during every raid, the ones where someone says something just absolutely hilarious, and then it ends up turning into a team-wide meme from then on. We have a lot of those. If you're watching our raid stream, which Bartholomew does on a bonus level every Tuesday, you'll see why it's so funny to watch our streams because we just banter all the time. We have a lot of memes like, when Odin back in Legion says, I don't even know what he actually says because we heard it as a shocking wheat thin. And now it's just a shocking wheat thin all the time. Every time he says it, the cake boss, someone said pain cluster buster. And it was just like the funniest thing. And then Barf also plays sounders during our raids through his stream. So when we have a mob called the Destructor, he'll play the Destructor sound from Futurama. So things like that make it really fun. So I think our raid is not necessarily like we're absolutely insane having crazy stories, but we're just kind of entertaining ourselves all the time.
That's the one thing I've heard from people in RCC is it's the camaraderie. You're building a bond with somebody, and sometimes they can be stressful moments, but together, both of you are growing in it.
Yes. There was a time recently, we like to call Zekvos Voidberg because he's like this void, tentacly, crabby looking guy. Somebody used a toy that puts a box out and it makes a lot of lightning and extra damage come out. And none of us knew what happened. We wiped. We had no idea what was going on. We just knew it wasn't right. Something weird happened. And nobody would fess up to who clicked the toy. And it drove me nuts for probably 2 or 3 weeks. I could not figure it out. Everyone was just keeping quiet. And finally, I decided, okay, I'm going to look in the logs. I bet the logs will say what this is. And it actually helped me learn how to read logs, which is hilarious that I had to learn that way. But I'm grateful for it. I did figure out who did it, but it was really funny because now anytime we do something bizarre in the raid that happens like that, we're like, okay, who clicked the box? Who did the thing?
That reminds me of when I was in second grade. Somebody cut somebody else's hair. No one fessed up to it.
Oh, no.
So all of us spent time in detention for, I think, 2 weeks because nobody fessed up to it. So our teacher should have had like raid logs.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's like a raid lock from recess.
Yes. Whoever hired our peak teacher, they hired correctly because I never wanted to get into detention ever again. No, though in third or fourth grade, I forged my dad's name on a math test. I struggled with math, but
Ooh, Frazley the rebel.
I had to go back to detention again and never wanted to go back again after that.
Isn't it funny how when we're little, we think that we can forge a name and it looks so obviously wrong looking back on it. But at the time you're like, oh yeah, this is good. This looks like my parents' handwriting. Sure.
Well, and I was stupid on another time. There was a test. I didn't know the word from Doug. Doug turned in a test that had like scribbles on it because it's animated. So they're just showing scribble. I was like, I wonder if that works if I could just scribble. I didn't go to detention, but my teacher was not happy. I had to explain. She's like, I get your logic, but you need to be smarter than that. I was like, yeah, I know.
Aww.
Well, you have an amazing ability to empathize with people and where they are in their life and what they're dealing with. How has that played a part in developing your philosophy as an officer and a raid leader?
So this question is so lovely and made me smile so much. So it's just having you say that I have an amazing ability to empathize. What? Frazley, that's so kind.
On Twitter, I will see like you'll respond to somebody or you'll link something and like, oh, I get that. And you help me see things that I never saw in different areas. So I lurk a lot more than I may like something on Twitter, but I read a lot of what you do, and it's so you make me think a lot.
So I would say when it comes to being a raid leader, at least, those traits are almost a detriment. I have a hard time being harsh or saying no, mainly because I know what people are going through in their daily lives, and I know WoW is a game. It's meant to be fun. So I don't want to yell at people or make people feel bad because they did something wrong on a boss just because, we're just people playing a game. And my team is pretty casual. The majority of us really like it that way. We do have a handful of folks who join us regularly from higher difficulty raid teams, and they really know their stuff. And that helps a ton mechanically. Not only that, but my being able to ask them questions, and they're really lovely and help me learn. They never make me feel dumb for not knowing stuff. But I feel like more than being a leader, I'm more of an organizer. So I'm still learning how to say, no, I'm sorry, our team's full, because I feel bad excluding people, or we need to focus and cut the chatter so we can kill a boss, because I'm also enjoying the socialization that's happening during raids.
That was one thing that, especially here, I had to learn that as well. I had to learn, like, when I have people on, I have to move the show, I have to do things. It was Zort who said, there's the social side, but you have to be the leader, and so I can definitely empathize with that.
Yep. There is a motto, I guess, that I use during raids, which is practice makes progress. It's not practice makes perfect, but practice makes progress. And I use this when we are doing progression. I like to say that wipes aren't failure if you're learning. As long as we're progressing, even if it takes us 20 pulls to kill a boss, we're learning a little bit with each pull. And I feel like that has been kind of revolutionary to not only me, but the team as a whole. It keeps the mood a little bit lighter when we're doing progression. It makes it so we don't play the blame game and say like, oh, well, so-and-so did this and that's why we wiped. I've been in teams like that. It's not fun. I want to have a good time while I'm playing the game.
one of the reasons I got out of vanilla rating was that my vanilla rating was, it could be like that. And like we had a change of leadership and it turned into that. Like I've been on a few runs. I don't think I've been with RCC, but I've been with like Facebook. When I messed up something, they're like, here's why you need to do that better. I'm like, okay, that helped me understand better. And it helped me learn my mechanics better. And I think it was actually Jer. I don't know if Jer's with RCC, but Jer's on one of the CTR raid teams. And they actually helped me learn that my warrior rotation was awful. I mean, but they didn't say like in an awful way. They said, here's why you need to do this stuff better. And I love that.
They want to genuinely help instead of bringing you down and make you feel bad because you don't know a thing. Like everyone can learn. It's just a matter of getting in there and practicing it.
That's one thing I wish LFG and LFR would be a better mindset of that, is that you see people wanting to like throw their power and their knowledge. And I think that's where a lot of the toxicity comes from. Like, oh, you don't know that? Or like we do this all the time. Why? Yeah. And I love when someone's in those like, hey, on this next boss, let's try doing it this way. And like you see the whole run goes much better because everyone was like, even in the LFR on CTR, someone in the pug said, on this next boss, we're going to clear here. We're going to clear slowly so that way we don't pull the entire room. And we downed it in one kill. So it was, everybody understood what was going on.
Yeah. And it usually only takes one person to put out that positive message of encouragement to get it started for other people who feel the same way to chime in. Because it's really hard when you have all these people just being really mean to jump in with something encouraging and positive because they're usually the first person to get beat down. But once one person steps up, it opens the door for other people to do the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Practice comes a long way too in podcasting. And like, I can definitely say that I've had to practice a lot. And 91 episodes later, I finally think that I understand better. I'm still learning stuff though, but
every time you do it is another chance to learn.
Absolutely. Yep. And you are a podcaster. I was trying to do my research to make sure that I caught all the ones that I can remember, because like I've seen you on different podcasts. So you've been on various podcasts. I still remember the Yarn Goggles at Azeroth Round Tables, and then you were on recently, and I need to listen to that one because everyone says that one was amazing. The one that you just did was like a Q&A. That one's on my queue to listen to. But like I still remember the Yarn Goggles. That was just like.
I actually went back and re-listened to that episode because I couldn't remember what the heck Yarn Goggles were. And it was just a mash of us saying Fjarnskagel. But yes, I laughed so much re-listening to that because I put it on 1.5 speed.
Oh, nice.
And having us talk about the lore of Legion in a retrospective on 1.5 speed was amazing.
It's amazing what we knew then, but now what we know. It's so weird to go back. Like when I'm on the alts, I'm like, oh wow, this was a story in Legion, and here's what our big focus was. And like now,
whole different perspective.
Yeah. What I love though is seeing like some of these characters. Like I was going through like Zuna, and they talk about Azara. I'm like, oh yeah, because Azara is already creeping in. Yes,
we'll get to see her soon. I think, maybe, hopefully.
I'm excited for that. 8.2. So we get Mechanomes and we get Azara. That's going to be great. and before we get into the trek, you were on Campfire Chronicles.
I was. Plaggy Boy had this idea to do a podcast that was kind of a storytelling around a campfire. And I loved my time on there. Unfortunately, I have some chronic illnesses and they were flaring up. So I decided to back out of that. But he's gone on to start his own personal podcast called the Plagcast. So you can hear some of our stories on that now.
Nice. Yeah. I love that idea. I mean, podcasting is stories. I mean, even today, you've shared so many stories. It's fun to hear that. Now we just need like a campfire sound effect. But I've noticed through like Discord that you are on a podcast called This Week in Trek.
I am. I love Star Trek. I'm a big nerd for Star Trek.
When did you realize you had a passion for Star Trek?
When I was little, my parents watched The Next Generation, and I would watch that with them. But I never really got into it until I was listening to The Morning Stream, which is a podcast with Scott Johnson's network. And they used to have Daryl the Trek Nerd do a segment called Stump a Trek Nerd, where it was kind of a trivia question they gave him every day, and he had to answer it with his vast knowledge of Trek. It hooked me in because I love trivia to begin with. So I went back, me and my husband watched all the Star Trek series on Netflix, and I freaking loved it. It was just, it clicked with me in a way that a lot of other shows don't. So when Star Trek Discovery was announced, I was kind of given this chance to have my Star Trek, a show that I could watch as it's being released. I freaking love it. So Mike and Daryl from This Week in Trek asked me to be a guest on the Discovery recap episodes, and I've been having a ton of fun with that.
That's a series I need to subscribe to CBS to watch because it sounds like so much fun. And like the topics you were discussing, I tuned in on Saturday because I was able to do it in live, and that was cool to be like the deeper tones in Star Trek. That was one thing that someone said is Star Wars has some of the themes, but it's a lot more action.
Yes.
Star Trek, it's the dialogue between people. And that actually was something that when I went to the Star Trek experience down in Las Vegas.
I am so jealous. That sounds amazing.
Oh, it was. And it's one of those, I want to get into Star Trek because I had so much fun there. So we were down in Las Vegas as a family. It was our Arizona trip. I've got 3 sisters. 2 of them are Star Trek fans. One, I don't know why they didn't want to go along, but one said, hey, do you want to go to the Star Trek experience? So I was like, hey, sounds good.
Yes.
So you go through the line past all the Star Trek memorabilia, which I wish I had known more of Star Trek because there were some things there that my mind and any Star Trek fan would just boggle at the props that were in line. And to me, as a 9-year-old, I didn't quite get it.
Yeah.
I wish we had time travel so I could go back and go through all that and experience it.
Kind of related. When I was really little, my family went to Colonial Williamsburg on a trip, and it was very similar where I didn't have the perspective to understand what colonial was, but then I ended up moving to Colonial Williamsburg as an adult. And so now when I go to the museums, I have a huge perspective compared to that little girl looking at the old stuff at that point. And now I'm like, oh, it has this point in history and it has this deeper meaning, and I can value it a little bit more. But I can only imagine if I put myself in your shoes then, oh my goodness, doing that with Star Trek, I would freak out.
Oh, and put you into the world. So we go on to this, the whole queue is to go onto this ride, one of those body wars that you get into a car and the whole thing moves around. So we're lining up and they're talking about, okay, so we're going to go through here and stuff like that. All of a sudden it blacks out and you are on the teleportation bay on the Enterprise. Yeah. As a 9-year-old, my mind was just I've seen this and I've watched Star Trek episodes with my sisters. I've seen this. I'm on it. I mean, as a kid, thankfully I also didn't see any of the flaws in the production. I mean, because I bet, with anything, there's always, I didn't see any of that. I knew part of it that wasn't real at the age, but I knew also, I loved it. So then they walk you onto the bridge and you see people walking around. I mean, it was amazing. And then they need to get you off. So you go on an elevator down and then you get onto a people mover and you fly through Las Vegas down and you crash into the hotel where the place is at. So you crashed on the floor. So, I mean, its storyline took you out of this world, literally, and then back in. It was so amazing. And I've never experienced something ever like that. And to this day, after that, you get cantinas. There are places where people can drink, but also I saw characters from the series fighting with each other, doing things like one got into an argument with somebody else. So, I mean, I got to see Star Trek played out in front of me, and I loved that. So Star Trek is on my list to delve in. I've seen some of the older series. I've seen Next Generation. I just need to get in and watch it as a fresh perspective because it has a charm that I can't describe it. I mean, and I love seeing people that are passionate about Trek, and I love seeing when people show they're passionate about it. And I'm never on the Star Trek or Star Wars.
You can like both.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I will joke for fun and be like, oh yeah, because the Han Solo was in Star Trek. No, but I always mean it in lighthearted.
The thing I like about Star Trek is it helps you examine our own humanity in a different setting because it is sci-fi. So it takes stories that we are struggling with in our daily lives, plants them in this, like you said, out of this world setting. So we have kind of a mirror to examine those stories about ourselves and society.
That's one of the reasons why Doctor Who and even WoW lore works so well.
Yep.
Because when you're in those you don't have your preconceived stances. I can be guarded on stuff without even realizing it. But if I take it into somewhere else, I can discuss things and not feel like I'm going to offend somebody or feel like I'm going to have to be defensive.
A good point. I'd never thought of it that way. That's a really good point.
That's the reason why I like sci-fi and fantasy. I've always, and I think why geeks love it too, because geeks see all the stuff, and I use geeks lovingly because I'm a geek, and geeks have seen the finer parts of life and seen what life's about, and talking about it in like things like this. And I want to end on one more story before we get back into podcasting. So another thing, I was a toddler when this came out, so I didn't quite appreciate it. But Universal Studios Orlando had an experience. It was the Star Trek experience. I think I found it was the Universal Studios Orlando Star Trek Adventure Screen Test Home Video Adventure. So huge, long title. But what was cool is it was like some of the early blue screen for consumers. So like you went there, they put you on a set. I don't remember any of this, but I've seen them. Like we did like 3 or 4 times because I have the VHS tapes here. I need to find it.
Digitize that. We need to see it.
It was incredible. Like you're on this and they planted you into it. And only every once in a while would you see like the particle effects because they didn't have somebody going frame by frame, but it was so cool. And like at one point, I'm a toddler. You see me, I'm running across the screen and my dad's like, get back here. So my twin sisters, out of the 3 sisters, the twins are the most Trek fanatics. I mean, like I just love it the most. The joy on their face on these videos, like being on here, and you could see like they had so much fun saying the phrases, and that I enjoyed so much too. Was like seeing their passion, and I wish I had stuff like that again. It'd be fun to have like be in the movie, be in the experience, because that was truly being in the video. And like it opened and ended. Like I think William Shatner was on there. It was all the fun stuff there.
That's awesome. They do have a couple different things that I would love to experience someday. I think up in New York they have a bridge. I don't know if it's the original bridge or a fan build out. I'm to look into that, but they do have events where some of the actors come in and you can do meet and greets on the bridge with them and learn about the set and things like that. And then every year they do in Vegas now, the Star Trek Las Vegas big convention. And a ton of the actors go there and they have panels and fan stuff. And I think that might be how would you even put it? The evolution of the Star Trek experience that you got to experience. It looks really, really amazing. I would say it's like BlizzCon for Trek nerds. Basically.
Nice.
Yeah.
So one of those goals to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. There are people who go to that every year like a pilgrimage, like Blizzard fans do to BlizzCon. Yep.
Nice. And it gives people something to look forward to. It gives them a hope. I like that. Back in the podcasting, how did you overcome the fear and the little voice in your head to podcast?
I really didn't. Every time I sit down to podcast, I am a bundle of nerves. And you saw this when we first got on the call. I'm just like super excited and hyped and flailing and just so excited. So there's this line from My Little Pony where Pinkie Pie talks about being nervous-sighted, which is a combination of nervous and excited. And I just try to remind myself that the body makes the same physical responses to being excited as it does to being anxious. And so I try to transmute that in my mind to tell myself, I'm not scared. I'm just really looking forward to this thing that I'm doing. And every single time I sit down to podcast is practice in getting used to feeling that discomfort because it does not go away. But every time I do the thing, I'm amazed at what I'm capable of. And that in itself just builds confidence like, whoa, and makes it not easier next time, but a little less discomfort.
I think it goes back into that practice makes progress.
Absolutely.
Because every time you progress as a person and you're progressing in that and you're sharing a passion and a love for something, there's nothing like it. I mean, there's nothing like being able to be like, hey, I love this thing so much that I want to talk about it whenever I'm on that podcast.
Right.
I was reading the notes beforehand. I'm like, when you describe like the bundle of nerves like that, because that was me this morning. I was like, about like 30 minutes before, I'm like, I'm so nervous. I'm so excited. And it's like, it'll be great. It'll be great. And I was like, calm, get into that position.
Right. And I naturally like being excited just as a sense of being. It's kind of just who I am. I'm always kind of hyped up. So I try to calm myself, but it just doesn't work. There's just too much in this world to just enjoy. Just go with it.
Oh yeah. And if we make mistakes, we move on and we're
human. It happens.
Absolutely. Ali reminded me of something I told him a while back about being human. I'm like, you're right. We be human. We learn. And like whenever I'm streaming, I will make a mistake or something will go on technical rise. I just fix it next time and move on.
Yep. The one thing I am grateful for is I have never done a podcast of my own. I've never sat down to understand how to upload things to an RSS feed and things like that. I'm always the guest on someone else's show. So for me personally, that's a little bit of comfort to know that I don't have to deal with those things. So for people that are just starting in podcasting and doing their own podcast and taking in all of that technical knowledge as well as doing the actual voice recordings of podcasts, it's a lot, and they should be proud of that.
I think somebody said it's not natural. It's not like we don't have that ingrained ability to do it. We just have to keep at it.
Just try.
And I always love when I'm on a podcast and I want to edit it. I'm like, okay, I'll be on the podcast. The editing is like probably, I like it because it recharges me, but also it's work.
Yes. I do another thing for This Week in Trek podcast where I take the podcast from the previous week and I create a mashup of it for the next week's segment. And I call it Last Week on This Week in Trek. And I've been doing that for probably a year now, at least. That has helped me get comfortable with audio editing. But then all I have to do is send the file to Mike and Daryl to play on their podcast. So I think if someone is hesitant to get into podcasting, there are other ways like that to dabble in it before you just jump in full force. Ooh. Do a segment, do a guest appearance, things like that.
I like that. Well, and some of the podcasters I know in the Buzzer community started as a segment for a show. Like they would send in segments and then they just started doing it more and more. What I've seen on this show, some of the guests that I've had on have gone on to do their own shows. And that always gives me the most joy to be like, somebody took that and ran with it. I love that.
Yes. And you don't have to make an hour or 2 hour long thing to create value for the community. I mean, if you do, that's amazing. It's so much work. But if you want to get started, just do something small. Just get started, give it a shot, and who knows where it'll go.
Absolutely. I know some small podcasts. I say small in like length, not small in like value. And they've now gone longer because they get in there and they get excited and they can't stop talking.
Yes.
So what is the best piece of advice anyone has ever given you?
This question is so hard. You ask the best questions that actually make me think. I don't think it was necessarily advice that some person gave me personally, but a thing that I read, a philosophy from the writer Danielle Laporte. She talks about this idea of core desired feelings. That's kind of this idea of instead of doing a thing in hopes that it will make you feel a certain way, you turn it around and you look at it the other way around. You decide first how you want to feel and then do the things that will make you feel that way. And that kind of revolutionized how I go about my everyday life. So instead of waking up and saying, today I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then at the end of the day, I feel like really drained or I don't feel great. I wake up and I say, today I want to feel calm, or today I want to feel energized, or today I want to feel like I have lots of vitality. And I focus on taking my day and my routines and doing things that I know will enrich me in that way.
I like that. That's kind of like for problem solving. I think it was Techie Taco said, take an idea. How do I do that? And I like that. What do I want to do? How can I get to that?
Yes. Instead of like, if I want to wake up and I want to feel calm that day, instead of drinking 10 cups of coffee, I'll have some water and some tea instead. And it really changes the way that I just go about my day in general. Instead of letting the things I do carry me along in this wave, I get to be the wave and decide where I want to be carried.
Wow.
That was poetic.
I want to remember that because I like that.
It's definitely a good philosophy to look into. She explains it way better than I could, way more in depth. But once I learned about that, it made my entire life just kind of different. in a good way.
And speaking of your life, what is one thing people don't realize about you?
So I am this kind of computer nerd. I stay inside most of the time. You wouldn't look at me and say, wow, she's an outdoorsy kind of person. But I live in the woods. Like, my house is surrounded by woods, and not a day goes by that I don't see some kind of woodland creature. Sometimes I feel like Snow White in a way, where I'm looking out my window. My desk faces a window. I will see a deer go by, or I see a bunch of squirrels climbing up a tree. The other day I was looking out my window and I saw a bald eagle fly above. And it's just one of those things that in my life, it matters so much to me, but you wouldn't know that just looking at me. Sometimes even when I go outside, I'll see like turtles and snakes, and sometimes there's ducks, and it's just all kinds of creatures and critters. And it makes me just so happy.
I'm just picturing the person in Enchant, like when they started singing and like all the real life creatures walk into the New York apartment. I'm just like picturing you like singing and having all the pets like around you, and like they're doing all the chores.
That would be great if I could get them to come in and do my chores. Yeah, yesterday I had some squirrels climbing on my window, which was great. I was able to get a video of that on my Snapchat, and I've never seen squirrels climb a window before, but they were all up on that, like spider squirrels.
Wow. Spider squirrel. Spider squirrel.
Related, my favorite superhero is the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. So
I have never heard of that one.
She's fantastic. Fantastic. Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. She's also a peer of Ms. Marvel, the new version of Ms. Marvel. So if you know any comic book fans, or especially teenage or younger girls that are interested in comics, those are two that I really recommend dabbling in. Unbeatable Squirrel Girl and Ms. Marvel.
Nice. I'll have a link in the show notes to like a Wikipedia or whatever the best resource for them on that.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today on FrazlCast. The time always flies. It
really
insane.
Does.
So where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at Xandara. That's Xandara.
And I always have to look in Discord, be like, is it Xandara or is it Calazandar? Or Calazandar?
There's so many people with Zan type names. And the funniest thing is my husband has a sister whose name is Alexandra, and she goes by Zan. And we didn't know that until way after we met. That's my screen name and that was her name. It seems like a very common internet name is the Zan something or other. So yeah.
It sounds cool and it's different. I like that. Well, I'm going to head back to Ironforge. So thank you, Cara.
Bye, Frazley.
Well, I'm back at my home of Ironforge until we one day reclaim Gnomergon. And this has been another episode of FrazlCast. I can't believe we're episode 91 and moving fast toward episodes 100. Woo! Well, I am Frazley, and you can find the show at gnomepodcast.com. Until next week, be awesome.
Please use before date on top of Buxley. Buxley here to answer your World of Warcraft questions in this edition of Ask Buxley. This question is about cooking. Barfalong asks, Buxley, there are so many recipes out there. Where did they all come from? Many recipes were handed down from generation to generation, even the really terrible ones. It's tradition, you know? And even within each faction, each race has their own specialties, which are also handed down. You want beer? Ask a dwarf. They've probably forgotten more about beer than most people know. Gnomes that are terrible at skydiving make excellent pancakes. And night elves? Well, let's just say things have gotten a lot better from the very early night elf days. They don't talk about it much now, but stick was considered a great delicacy. That's right, stick, as in don't point that stick at me, that kind of stick. It was popular for many years. And then came cooked stick. I could go on, but things are a lot better now. Now they have salads. I know that's just leaves, but at least it's not on a cooked stick. Anyway, all recipes you know have been created by famous chefs from many different regions. That blonde spiky-haired dude, Guy Fieri, the host of Dungeons, Drive-Overs, and Dives, he created many interesting things. Gorgon Ramsay comes up with some pretty good dishes too, which are enjoyable if you can get past all the yelling he does. And Bobby Flay You Alive, that famous orc chef, will even challenge you to a cooking contest. Be careful though. If you lose, the consequences are pretty grim. Thanks for your question. If you'd like to know what I've been up to every day, follow Ask Buxley on Twitter. If you like the segment, please take the time and rate it on iTunes.
Time is money, friend.
Welcome to the Frazley Report, a short podcast by me, the Awesome Gnome, about the World of Warcraft. So we've got a doozy of news that has popped up this week. Speaking of popping up, there will be 4 new books coming this fall. The Art of Hearthstone, Year of the Kraken, The Art of Diablo, The Cinematic Art of World of Warcraft, and my favorite, World of Warcraft pop-up book. The description for the last one is choose your faction, pick your weapons, and prepare for an astonishing vision of the world of Azeroth like you've never seen before. Built by best-selling paper engineer Matthew Reinhardt, the World of Warcraft pop-up book brings the beloved locations of Warcraft to life, from the classic faction hubs of Orgrimmar and Stormwind, to the battle-scarred lands of Lordaeron and Teldrassil, and even the new capital cities of Kul Tiras and Zandalar. Each page unfolds into an eye-popping treat, depicting iconic sites with brand new art and interactive pieces. So we got word of a few cancelled functionalities of this book. You know how kids these days like interactive things and using their phones? So they were going to include an ability to use the augmented reality function of phones to recreate the burning of Teldrassil or the siege of Lordaeron in 3D. But the person in charge of that got fired. We also don't have word yet if the Art of Diablo will have an ebook release for phones yet. Bayer has released a report that the sales of their back pain medicines in the Broken Isles have gone down ever since the Battle for Azeroth. It has caused a backlog of the Bayer medicine for vendors over in the Broken Isles. I talked with one of the quest givers.
Yeah, my back pain's gone. No one's standing on me anymore. People can actually find me.
And in some strange news, there was a hunter who believed they were a superhero and told everyone to call them the Star-Lord. They were trying to tame a raccoon as a pet. They also had with them a plastic tree, which they were wheeling around in a wagon, and they were talking to it and claiming it kept saying, "I am rooted." They also were kiting a rock elemental behind them, which they claimed was a friend, even though it kept attacking them. I can't make this news up. We live in unusual times, and I've seen stranger things happen. Oh, and before we go, we cracked the case on who runs the account for the world record egg. It's Snowy. They had a burning desire to do it. Well, that's it for the news. Until next week, be awesome.
FrazlCast is a fan podcast that covers Blizzard games. We are not affiliated with Blizzard Entertainment. Views expressed by the host and guests are their own. Some of the art, music, and sound effects come from Blizzard games and are owned by Blizzard Entertainment, Inc. No copyright infringement is intended.
Want more awesomeness every week? Visit weeklyawesome.com. Weekly podcasts to make your week better. Remember to smile and be awesome.
This show is brought to you by Dragon Powered Studio. Find more at dragonpoweredstudio.com.